KJ Joseph, Director of GIFT. And we understand that all the panelists of the inaugural session have already logged in. So we are going to start the program at 10 o'clock. We have one more minute left. I'm trying to take time to kind of tell those who are waiting to hear from us in terms of the program. We have already sent the program to all of you. As usual, we have a very tightly packed program with 2 days, starting at 10 o'clock. Tomorrow we'll be starting at 9:30. Please ensure that all of you are joining us at 9:30. Today we are going to start at 10 o'clock. So especially, you may please note that as Sri Manishankar Iyer rightly raised the concern, though we are going to present the experience of local self-governments in tomorrow in Kerala, the deliberations will be in English, and even if some of the local self-government representatives are speaking in Malayalam, there will be subtitles in English. We ensure that nothing deliberated here remain ununderstood. So thank you very much to all of you. It's at 10 o'clock. Well, I have my pleasant duty of welcoming all of you for the inaugural session in particular, and for the webinar on COVID-19 pandemic and local governments. This is jointly organized by Kerala Institute of Local Administration and Gujarat Institute of Finance and Taxation. So, Sri Manishankar Iyer, formerly the Honorable Union Minister for Panchayati Raj, Government of India. Sri A.C. Moideen, Honorable Minister for Local Self-Governments, Government of Kerala. Dr. T.M. Thomas Isaac, Honorable Minister for Finance and COIR, Government of Kerala and Chairperson of GIFT. Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq, Representative, UNICEF India. Dr. S.S. Meenakshi Sundaram, IAS, former Secretary, Government of India. Sri Jagadananda, former State Information Commissioner, Odisha. Chairpersons of the various sessions to be held today and tomorrow, and the panelists of all the sessions, friends of Kila and GIFT who have logged in online, ladies and gentlemen. We at GIFT extremely feel happy because this is a wonderful opportunity that we got to join hands with Kila to reflect upon an issue of paramount importance today, that is the COVID-19 pandemic and the local self-governments. This event, in fact, being conceived by our chairperson and Honorable Minister for Local Governments, A.C. Moideen. Sri Moideen, for unexpected commitment, could not be here, but he has sent his recorded video special inaugural address, which will be.
Professor Joseph, please hold the microphone closer to your mouth.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So, to my mind, local self-governments or democratic decentralization is an innovation of first order with its profound influence, not only in terms of how democracies work and how we empower people. This is, in fact, a major change that made difference in the way in which people have been able to make difference in their fight in COVID-19 pandemic. So today we have differential experience across the world, while the world at large over the last 40 to 50 years made self-reliance the most maligned term and embraced, revealed a comparative advantage with utmost passion. What we have seen over time is the importance of local self-governments and self-reliance has taken a backseat. And we have seen that under globalization with all its virtues, with the pandemic, this new pandemic, we are going to have a very new world and new way of life after the pandemic, if we can expect those after pandemic days. So it is very important today that the topic which is taken up in this context, it is very much important to see how pandemic, the local self-governments have influenced our fight with COVID-19. In fact, it is in fact not countries that fight with pandemic. It is the people who fight with pandemic. Unless you empower people, you won't be able to fight with the pandemic. Here, we have got 2 days deliberations. My job is, I consider a very pleasant one to welcome all of you to this conference, to this webinar. And I'm not going to spend time in terms of, welcoming each one of you. Nonetheless, and I feel very important that I welcome especially the speakers in the inaugural session. We have Sri Manishankar Iyer, for whom decentralized development is in fact part of his life. In fact, I heard so much about him from Sri Jairam Ramesh, who's talk about him. And for him, decentralized development is a passion. So thank you very much for kindly agreeing to our honorable minister's invitation to join us. And we are extremely happy that this event is jointly guided by the 2 ministers, Sri S.E. Moitin and Dr. C.M. Thomas Isaac, who in the mid-90s, in fact, took Kerala on a major change by steering the decentralized development process in Kerala. Now we have got Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq. I know that a country representative of UNICEF today, I'm sure she has a very hectic schedule. Nonetheless, she has kindly agreed to our invitation and agreed to speak to us to deliver the special address. Similarly, Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram and Jagadananda, both of them with their enormous experience, accumulated experience, and they have, because of their commitment to the cause, they have agreed to join us. So I welcome all of you for your for being with us, and I would like welcome all those who have logged in online. And with these words, I would like to invite Sri Manishankar Iyer to chair this session and conduct the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Honorable Minister of Finance, Kerala, Comrade T.M. Thomas Isaac, the 2 state ministers in absentia, Honorable Ishwarappa ji and the Honorable Mohiddin ji, as well as all distinguished panelists and all distinguished participants. I think it is entirely appropriate that we should begin by thanking Professor K.J. Joseph and Professor Joy Elamon for having brought this webinar together under the overall guidance of Sri Thomas Isaac. This is an unique occasion and we should be celebrating it. But I'm afraid as chair of this session, I'm obliged to begin on a somewhat dour note. I note with great regret the absence of not only the Union Minister of Panchayati Raj, but also of any representative of the Ministry of Panchayati Raj in Delhi. This, I think, is a major lacuna because COVID-19 is not a local government problem or a state government problem. It is a national problem. And it's a national problem that calls for cooperative federalism and not for non cooperative federalism, which appears to be the fate that is overtaking this seminar, where we will be hearing a number of voices from the grassroots and a number of voices that have been champions of Panchayati Raj for the last 25 years and more, as also from the founder of the People's Movement, that's Thomas Isaac himself, which was the earliest experiment in tying the governmental system of Panchayati Raj to the participation of the people. So, all these are extremely important voices, and it is a pity that they are not being heard in New Delhi, except I hope clandestinely. Perhaps somebody in the ministry is looking into this webinar. Under these circumstances, it is my job, I think, to try to introduce the concept of why this is to be seen as a three front exercise. Because it is a national issue, it is absolutely essential that the macro picture on policy guidelines be laid down by the union government, but with a clear understanding that any policy, any large general national policy to influence the outcome will have to require not only the cooperation and wholehearted participation of the state governments, but also of the third tier of government. And this is where I'd like to emphasize that the Constitution in Article 243G defines the panchayats as units of local self-government and not self-governance. And that is the critical contribution that the constitutional amendments of 1992 made to the original conception and of Mahatma Gandhi. And that is why I think it is necessary to bring local government in as part and parcel of the machinery at the three levels. The macro level, which is defined by the central government, the micro level, which is defined by the state governments, and the nano level, which will have to be defined, as it has been in Kerala, by the panchayats and the people. And that is why I greatly welcome the expression, people will fight the pandemic, that has been used by Professor Joseph. That really sets the tone for this seminar. In our constitution, the ineluctability of local government is given constitutional sanction. But apart from establishing a uniform structure of Panchayati Raj in the country as a whole, and ensuring through reservations that at least a minimum reservation in both the extent of that reservation and in the manner in which that reservation is implemented for the scheduled castes, for the scheduled tribes, for the backward classes, and for women is written into the Constitution. But apart from that, the Constitution mostly has recommendatory suggestions to make. including the 11th and 12th schedules, which illustratively set out what is the role or the ambit of work of the local self government units. These are to be translated into statutory powers through state legislation. Indeed, Article 243G and its counterpart for the municipalities says that the legislature of a state by law shall, etc. So there has to be conformity legislation to bring the constitutional provisions into legislative effect. And that very happily all state governments without exception have done. So, what are recommendatory provisions of the central legislation, that is the Constitution, have been translated into law, into state law by state legislations. So schedules 12 and 13, sorry, 11 and 12, to the extent that they are illustrative in the Constitution, have become obligatory and statutory under state law. State law has, in some minor cases, excluded some entries in the 11th schedule and the 12th schedule, but by and large, they have added rather than subtracted from the ambit of duties of the different levels of Panchayati Raj, that is the village level, the intermediate level, and the district level, as well as the town panchayats and the municipalities. To a large extent, metropolitan India has not been covered in parts 9 and 9A of the Constitution, which came into existence as a result of the 73rd and 74th Amendments, respectively. But what we are seeing in actual practice, because COVID 19 is more evident in metropolitan India than it is in semi urban or rural India, is that while the Brihan Mumbai Corporation, for instance, or the Chennai Corporation or the Kolkata Corporation are deeply involved in what is to be done about fighting this pandemic, there is virtually no understanding at the center as to what should be the role of the units of local self government at the panchayat and the municipal level. This is something that needs to be rectified urgently in the conception of the role of different levels of government in fighting this pandemic. At the state level, Kerala, Karnataka, and some other states that have made considerable progress with regard to empowering, effectively empowering the panchayats and other units of local self government, they have understood that they have the infrastructure, the governance infrastructure, to make the local units of self government active partners in this war against the pandemic. But in states that have yet to effectively empower the physical infrastructure of local government, there we find that there is inadequate knowledge and inadequate experience. So, bringing together all states under the umbrella of this webinar is a really intelligent way of sending out the message that what has been shown to be practical in Kerala and some other states is transferable to all the states where the Constitution applies and where the local legislatures, the state legislatures, have empowered, at least legally, the units of local self-government to take on their responsibilities. In these circumstances, while I am skeptical about the role that the union government will play in urging the full empowerment of the panchayats to handle this crisis, I'm hopeful that the example being set by several southern states and some western states, and a few northern states in this regard, as also perhaps isolated instances of the east and the northeast, that we will be able, as we move into the next phase of easing the lockdown and bringing economic requirements to the forefront, that it will be realized that the panchayats are not only essential to fight the pandemic as well as promote the economic resurgence, they're also essential as instruments of self-government to be effective. There is the new phenomenon in the phase that will follow in the second fortnight of May and has already commenced, of large numbers of migrant workers, as they are called, entering rural India and bringing them with them not only the joy of the reunion with their families, but also the danger of this disease spreading into those parts of India which have thus far been free of it. And the only place that these migrant workers can go and settle in is their villages and is their town panchayats and is their municipalities. They're coming away from the metropolitan areas. And therefore, while this is to be welcomed, greatly welcomed, I think it is necessary to understand that we need the effective delivery of all kinds of assistance to these migrant workers, which can only effectively be done by the local government authorities. Indeed, there would be no need for Panchayati Raj if the local bureaucracy had earlier proved effective. It is because the local bureaucracy on its own was unable to provide effective last mile delivery of public goods and services that we had resort to the panchayats, not working independently of the local bureaucracy, but in cooperation with them. And that is Kerala's major achievement. It's not as if the local bureaucracy has been replaced by the local self-government units, but that a synergistic method of keeping the panchayats as autonomous self-governing institutions, but at the same time in a cooperative relationship with the state government authorities at the district and sub-district level, that we have had the successes that have laid the foundations for the Kerala panchayats to react as effectively as they have done to this pandemic. That is the big lesson to be learned. Also, Kerala has the particular problem that a vast proportion of its workforce is in fact expatriate. There are Malayalis to be found everywhere from China to the United States and heavily concentrated in the Gulf area. And all these are areas of far higher pandemic consequences than India is or Kerala is. They are going to be coming back in very large numbers and they will have to be resettled. Where? Not in the metropolitan areas, but in the areas covered by the 73rd and 74th Amendment. And therefore, Kerala is already demonstrating that these institutions of local self-government can be very effectively used for the resettlement of the expatriate migrant worker without endangering the local population than any other state in India. So I think it is extremely appropriate that this webinar is a Kerala initiative. I think it's a very encouraging thing that this webinar is going to cover all parts of India except the union government. And I hope that from this webinar, the message will even penetrate the ears of the union government that we have to make cooperative federalism effective through having, and I'm quoting Sonia Gandhi here, a strong center, strong state governments, and strong panchayats. That is the way forward. And over the course of the next 2 days, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot, teach a lot, pick up on the experience of each other, and make the Indian response to what is happening more effective than it has even been so far, and to enable the reintegration of those who had to leave their homes to find work with the local population without any significant rise in the number of cases or the number of deaths. And I've asked Professor Isaac to kindly arrange for the latest international celebrity, who is the health minister, the Honorable Health Minister of Kerala, to kindly also participate in this seminar, if possible tomorrow, because she and Thomas have together lit the lamp of effective local government for an effective response to this pandemic. Thank you for having invited me to chair this seminar. I'll now request the videograph of the Kerala Minister of Local Self-Government, Janab Mohyuddin Saib, to now be screened. Thank you very much.
Respected Sri Manishangaraya, I am very respectable friends. I am privileged to be with you during this national webinar on COVID-19 pandemic and local governments. This world is passing through the phase of fear due to the COVID-19. It is still not known how many people in this world will affect or how much the damages will be as a result of this fearful disease declared as pandemic by the WHO. The statistics emerging each day is terrifying. Capitalist countries which had ignored public health services are not able to deal with this pandemic. America is having maximum number of COVID cases. Many other developed countries are also struggling. Kerala, with our limited financial resources, has been effectively fighting this pandemic. We have rich experience from the Kerala development model, well-developed public health system, experience from People's Plan campaign, and strong local government system. India's first case of corona was reported in Kerala on 13th January 2020. Since then, we have been successfully organizing disaster response. In the process, Kerala have been learning now new lessons and updating ourselves. This webinar is also an effort to learn from others to share our experience. As soon as the epidemic was reported from China, a definite system was designed with surveillance, testing and monitoring. People were brought into online. In some cases, home isolation was introduced. At the state level, in the health sector, there is state level rapid response team under the leadership of the health minister monitoring the health aspects of the pandemic. There is a state medical board to handle the technical and clinical aspects of case management. There is an expert committee too. The State Disaster Management Authority, under the chairmanship of Honorable Chief Minister, plays a major role in the management of this national disaster. The monitoring of all activities are done. Details from the grassroots like the panchayats are consolidated at the district level and state level. There is a war room with high-level officers from all relevant departments which works around the clock. Each such department has a COVID cell. In December 2019, the Kerala government directed all local self-governments to prepare local disaster management plans. This has helped the local government in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Now they are working jointly with the health department and the STMA to effectively curb the COVID-19. LHs have been organizing awareness campaigns on personal hygiene and need for social distancing. The campaign was named Break the Chain. Local governments appointed 433 new doctors to the PHCs and 342 junior health inspectors to the municipalities. More than 3 lakhs volunteers were reported in the local. Various committees have been formed to monitor the activities in the local level. Rapid response team were formed. Ward level community groups under the leadership of the prospective ward members along with health workers, Anganwadi workers, ASHA workers, Kudumbasri members, SC/ST promoters were also constituted to collect details on vulnerable groups to ensure timely support to them in case of an emergency. Those who are in quarantine or in home isolation are also monitored to ensure they did not violate it. Most importantly, food and other facilities are also arranged by the local self-government for the deserving groups during the lockdown. Community kitchens have been started across the state. On receiving instructions from the state government within hours, every local self-governments across the state rose to the challenge and set up community kitchens in their area. Till date, 86 lakhs people have been provided food from the community kitchens. 75 lakhs have received it through home delivery. The state has been taking great care in the health and well-being of migrant workers. LHs had done a massive exercise to map their camps and assess the living conditions. Wherever the condition is not good, camps were set up and provided food from the community kitchen for their choice. If they do not prefer Kerala food, they were provided with food kits with the help of department concerned so that they can prepare it themselves. Every day, when the figures of status of various points related to COVID-19 prevention in Kerala is prepared, it is to be noted that at the local level, the local self-government provide the data on a day-to-day basis. The emergency response team in the Department of Local Self-Governments coordinate these activities. All these are done through Kudumbasri, health workers, ASHA, Anganwadis, volunteer teams at the ground level. The LSD staff also play a commendable role. This is possible because all these are under the broad umbrella of Panchayat Raj or LSD system, which we have created over the last 25 years since the People's Plan campaign. As the lockdown gets relaxed, the local self-government will have to play a key role in the surveillance and monitoring of home isolation. They are already in the process of preparing to establish first-line treatment centers and more isolation centers if the need arises. We are also preparing for the future, especially for food security. The local self-government department is tying up with the agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries, industries, and cooperation departments for this. We are planning a scheme, Subiksha Kerala, whereby the local self-governments can take projects to promote agriculture through their annual plans. The department is aiming at schemes amounting to 3,830 crores rupees for this. I hope that this webinar gives us an opportunity to share our experience and learn from each other. I wish the program all success. I also formally declare this webinar open. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now call upon Dr. Thomas Isaac, Minister of Finance, Government of Kerala, to take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Sri Manishankar Ayarji. It's a great pleasure to be on the same platform as you. And Dr. Yasmin, I didn't say hello to you. I saw your face on the screen. And Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram, Sri Jagadananda, and dear friends, many of us who are going to be on this webinar have been working together on this mission of decentralizing the governance in India from early 1990s. Our process of coming together started with a very high note of great expectations with the passage of 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. But over time, in most places, expectations were not realized. A kind of stalemate set in. And then once again, when during the second UPA government, the expert committee on leveraging Panchayati Raj institutions, chaired by Manishankar, was set up. It again roused. Maybe it will be the new beginning. But I think the hopes were belied. Today, the pandemic gives rise to certain hope that it would be an appropriate time to bring back the Panchayati Raj governance into the center stage. Now, that's very obvious sitting in Kerala for the simple reason the medical institutions, aside the medical colleges, all the PHCs, CHCs, and taluk hospitals, and so on, are all transferred institutions to local governments. And the health staff there are under direct control. And local governments, even normal times, also play a very important role in the functioning of the health institutions in Kerala. Therefore, in this health emergency time, it's very obvious that local governments are going to play a very, very important role. Yeah, should have invited the health minister also. We just had a seminar, a webinar again, today, a week back, where she was chairing the session, and that's the reason. But I'll see to that. I'll meet her today, invite her to come and have a special address before the session on health. Yeah, your suggestion is accepted. It will be done. So it is obvious, but it may not be so in other states. But I think the chairman, you have already hinted a very important role the local governments can play in the pandemic time. Now, any disaster management is highly hierarchical, centralized process. But now it is also our experience in Kerala, particularly from the flood times, that the local governments would have to play a very important role, because whatever be your policy, your broad framework, ultimately the action takes place at the local level, particularly relief work and rehabilitation work. And therefore, in fact, there's a session in our webinar, local governments and disaster management. As the minister now, this inaugural address hinted, local governments in Kerala have all prepared a contingency plan for disaster management in the locality, in case that flood returns, in case the natural disaster comes, what should be done, and so on. In fact, we are going to prepare the floods, not only pandemic. We are expecting the flood this time also, because rains are going to be heavy. Well, but now, so therefore, it's very important to have flexibility in times of pandemic and other emergencies. Very simple thing from our experience, how local conditions can be so different, and in your intervention has got to be different. There is we have been by and large generally totally accepting whatever guidelines that are laid by the central government, because we understand you need to have a command system. Everybody, it's not the time for democratic debate and so on. So that has been so. But now there has been a serious difference of opinion regarding quarantining. Where do you quarantine? The kind of outside Malayalis returning home. Kerala has taken the position they are best quarantined for 14 days in their own house. Now, central government guideline is that they be quarantined in institutions. Now, I think it is understandable why Delhi thinks so. Because India at large, you cannot think of house quarantine for in the villages and so on. But Kerala's situation is so different. Majority of the people have pakka houses. That's the safest place to place them. They can have separate room within the house. And when you have institutional quarantine, There are a large number of people, and there are people who will have to serve them food and so on, visiting room by room. Suppose there is a positive case, there will be carriers to everybody else. There's a big danger. So from our experience, we have decided, well, house quarantining would be better. But now it has gone to the court. You see, I think this is a minimum, a kind of flexibility that should come with, because India is such a huge country and situations are so different. So I can give other examples where flexibility is very, very important. Anyway, the first statement that I want to make, I fully agree with the chairman that we need to have local governments can play a very important role in containing, in fighting coronavirus. One, now that lockdown is lifted, people are moving from place to place. It's very important in every locality that people look only there you can identify people who have come up from outside. And they have to be put under observation. Who else can do it? Everybody is living by food from one end of India to another. And who is going to keep their address list and so on? Only in the village, who has come into the village. And then there must be some authority in the village asking them to stay in the house. So, starting from identification, tracing, observing, and testing these people, a local authority will have to play an important role. And now, suppose you are putting somebody under observation, quarantine, then it is not just closing him or her into a room. You have to provide the food, medicine, counseling, palliative care. This cannot be done from above. Yeah? If you are serious about it, the local players have to be in action. And then once you are exiting from this lockdown or the pandemic times, then agriculture becomes the prime mover. Okay, it's where you start. And that is preeminently a domain of the local government, the local people, how to do that. We have got a session on MGNREGS. How do you use MGNREGS to unlock your agriculture? Now that cannot be planned from outside. Just means MGNREGS, at least for some time, to the pandemic time, made more flexible, so that the small-scale enterprises, the farmers who have been under lockdown, can effectively leverage MGNREGS. Or using now, for example, Government of India has put 10,000 crores, I don't know, in micro food enterprises and micro enterprise other support schemes. So now women self-help groups are the ideal existing institution that can be leveraged. Now, situation in states are different. In Kerala, all the SHGs, the Kudumbashree energies, are with the local government. You don't federate them above the local government. So, if you want to leverage very important two institutions, say MGNREGS, Employment Guarantee Program, and SHGs, then local government has to be a central fulcrum around which local planning, local activities go on. So in this case, I think it is very important, and something which I was suspecting Manishankar Iyer to refer to, because it was his most favorite theme of activity mapping. It's very important. We have activity mapping of the disaster management, health emergency, what the central government will do, what state government will do, what the local government will do. See, that raw clarity has to be brought. That is very, very important. We should start. Raw clarity be brought. And then there's a question of finance. Unfortunately, now if you take India at large, the major source of funds are Union Finance Commission's fund. That is the only assured money the local governments in most parts get. except states like Kerala and so on. But when our report on the expert committee on leveraging Panchayat Raj institutions was written, regarding the planning, we had three contingencies. First, a bare minimum, that is, Panchayat gets only Union Finance Commission and also MGNREGS. At that time, we had a backward area program also. But these two, what could be done? And the report says that a lot of things can be done. Can be done. There are many other good things to be leveraged and it can be done. So we had worked out three types of plans, interventions. So the money, you have to understand what is the money available. Perhaps we make a request to the Union Finance Commission itself. Another interim report that would provide more money to the local governments. At least do away with this classification to basic grant and tied grant. Give them freedom to do what is necessary. So I think experiences in India are going to be very, very different from state to state. But I am certain all local governments across India are forced to intervene in some way or other. Because that's the local powers institution by constitution at the local level. I also see reports. You see, one panchayat in Kerala just started physical distancing. We don't call it social distancing. We call it physical distancing by umbrella program. Okay, everybody should carry umbrella if they go out to the house. So everybody carries umbrella. Everybody would be 1 meter from each other. Buying things in the queue or in the crowd, everywhere you had to stand with an umbrella. Now I thought it was an isolated incident. Then I get from Bharatpur in Rajasthan, where they have decreed, the Panchayat has decreed that they should stand with umbrella in front of the liquor shop and other shops, so that there is a distancing. Then I now hear that in Maharashtra, some panchayats are taking it up. So there is a lot of things going on the bottom level. So this webinar, I thought now these sessions today and tomorrow would bring together the experiences in various places. I think it is the beginning of a kind of search to put together the experience. How did the local governments perform? How did they face the challenge? And have some people taken the initiative or not? We should put together information not just here, but people who are going to participate in the webinar, perhaps they could take initiative, write it up, a kind of paper. And the presentation here can be the beginning of such a paper, a survey of experience that is going on in India. Let's bring it together. And that I hope would provide a kind of platform from which we'll start again the dialogue, bringing in everybody. We don't want to be closed, but we'll keep on talking. It's very strange situation in India. You think in such a big emergency, everybody will want to come and talk. Okay, how to do it. But I find, for example, even opposition parties, it's not a kind of difference between ruling somebody and some people know. Even opposition party, some diffidence in trying to have a common understanding how to face this emergency. Then alternative discourse. So we have taken this initiative, but just to bring people to talk to each other. And then we'll continue to do that. Be sure this virus is going to be with us for some time. Maybe in a year. That's the time. Yes, 2020 is gone with the virus. And this is going to be a new normal for the year. And therefore, this won't be the end, but this will be the beginning. I hope, and as I told you, perhaps everybody will write down what they have time to say, because time is limited in the presentation here, and we'll have more fruitful discussions to come. So thank you very much. It's a great feeling to be once again the all-time colleagues in this big fight and democratize our governance system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thomas Isaac. That was a really important intervention. And now we are looking forward to the videographed contribution by the Honorable Minister of Karnataka, Sri Ishwarappa.
Sorry, we couldn't get his videograph message yesterday.
I see. Well, in that case,
sorry that. Yeah.
in that case, I think we can go on to the next speaker, who is Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq of UNICEF India. And I would ask her to make her presentation, noting that we have a total of 35 minutes within which to accommodate 3 people, so a little more than 10 minutes to each of you. Thank you, Yasmin ji. Over to you.
Thank you so much. I trust you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are able to hear you. We are hearing you.
Can you hear
We
me?
are hearing you.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to take a check. All right. Good morning, everyone. And really, Dr. Thomas, good to see you again, even though it's that we can connect even through technology to really focus on such an important subject. So let me begin by, first of all, acknowledging our respected chair, Manisha Kayarji, our Honorable Finance Minister, Dr. Isaac, Professor Joseph of the Gulati Institute, Dr. Elamon, who is our partner in Kila, and all the dignitaries, guests, and panel members. Really this invitation to be here. First of all, of course, I must congratulate the government of Kerala for the remarkable response that they have put in place. And of course, it's as expected. We have very high expectations of this. And your success is in your resilient institutions, in the committed leadership, and the deep-rooted democracy at the grassroots. So the model has all next couple of days, the global body as well as within which is experience or expertise that has
I'm afraid the voice is getting interrupted over and over again. So would the technicians please fix it? May I suggest, Yasmin, that you continue after the technicians have fixed it, and that in the meanwhile, I call the next speaker, my old friend, Dr. S.S. Meenakshi Sundaram, and while he's speaking, yes, come along.
switch my camera off just.
Yeah, sure. Your voice is there, so please continue.
Hello.
Yasmin ji? Okay, I think Dr. Meenakshi Sundaram now. And we'll come back to Yasmin.
Hello. Sir, shall we then we go to Jagadananda? Madam, we will get back to you. That's what IS said. We'll get back to you because of the poor connection from your side. We'll get
She
back.
can continue with her audio.
Next would be Jagadananda then. Dr. Jagadananda, please.
Yeah, I think let me join Manishankarji for really complimenting Dr. Ishaq and the whole team in Kerala for organizing this wonderful conversation, which has begun with the right earnest. So compliments Kerala. This is a wonderful time also for reflection, for course correction actually. India will be different after COVID-19. The world is going to be different. So therefore, session is going to lay down some foundations for decentralized community-based management of disasters, which includes COVID in future. So it's a future, agenda-setting event actually. So let me compliment you all. What I'm going to do in my next 8 minutes or 9 minutes, I'm going to lay down 4 areas before you quickly. The Panchayat Raj system, as explained by the chair Manishankarji, which began with a very good earnest, with a constitutional amendment. It's a constitutional body. So the local government at the village level and the state government at the assembly and the parliament at the national level, there are 3 constitutional bodies actually. They draw their power from the same constitution. Nobody is smaller, nobody is bigger actually. But in reality, delegated as a body where members of the legislative assembly, members of the parliament, they would like to, poke their nose to see that decisions are made in their presence or if not in their absence, but they have a greater say. So that really kills the whole power, power of decentralization.
They just want you to
This
know that Meenakshi
second
Sundaram
point
is not
I wanted to raise
taking
is
more time.
exclusion has become the order of the day now. I'm just painting the reality on the ground. And then I have a proposal, how do we move it? If exclusion has become the order of the day, that means, the regions where I come from, the Palli Sabha, the Gram Sabha, the village assembly, which is the foundation of the Panchayati Raj system of the local government, has led to Jagda Sabha, where people for benefits or beneficiary discussion. So there is the whole National Food Security Act, the PDS beneficiaries who will be in, who will be out, the MGNREGA discussion, the conversation around Forest Rights Act are very minimal. What is happening there is, who will get the benefit, and beneficiary selection has become the order of the day. So the third part is, large number of migrants have now come back and they are now on their way actually. And we had never imagined that there will be so many migrants who will be returning home. Government of India says the number is something around 5 crores, but we believe the number is something between 10 and 11 crores across the country, which is a huge, huge number. So therefore, what is necessary is, how do we redevelop our panchayat and the panchayat development plans so that these expat, migrants are accommodated in the development process in their, in their respective areas. The fourth area where I see the difference between rhetoric and the reality is the panchayats have really lost the greatest opportunity and space to develop a long-term vision, a long-term plan to address the climate change and issues like that, including the pandemic actually. So this is the backdrop. So, and if we don't recognize the reality on the ground, probably we will not be able to move forward. That is what I would like to emphasize. So what do we do now? I think Dr. Ishaq very clearly mentioned, and the Honorable Minister from Kerala, also the Panchayati Raj Minister, really articulated very well what panchayats are doing in Kerala. in my state and in my region also, quarantine facilities, panchayats are mandated to do, and they're running it, and some are running extremely well. They're managing the inbound migrants in transit. Some of them are doing disinfection of public space, roads, drains. They're trying to do so, ensure that social security benefits flow to the people. And that, and one of the major tasks which panchayats are doing right now is identification of the ultra poor who are left out in the NFSA process. They're not part of the PDS. So, and there are many who are coming out very, very clearly. So therefore, I think with this kind of experience from the ground, what is that we need to do? So I think in 2022, we have to think of a reimagined India, actually. And in reimagined India, rural renaissance is going to be the order of India. A huge rural renaissance is going to happen. And in 2022, if I imagine, rural areas in India are in the middle of a renaissance with an expanding economic and cultural life. Skilled migrant workers choose to remain in their villages. They are more connected than ever before through digital services. Because, the demonstration is millions who are traveling on foot to come to their homeland with no money, with no food, with no water. It's a very strong, this is a repercussion of their very strong negative experiences in cities, in outside, despite the best which Kerala has done. Not many states have done that. There is high-level discrimination which they have faced. They have, there is a higher, big cities where, now they have come to a conclusion that big cities and big places are unattractive for them. So they would like to come back. And if they would like to come back, in the reimagined India, I see invest in sustainable infrastructure in the rural areas, clean energy, maybe local transport, building resilience for the most vulnerable people. That is, the 94% of the workforce are informal. So how do you really bring insurance, pension schemes, formal credit at their doorstep? Now Union government has announced a plethora of programs through the banks. But where are the banks in the most difficult pockets in Odisha? I don't see them. In a district like Malkangiri, it's impossible for a person to access anything through a bank because banking almost is non-existent there. So therefore, I visualize a long-term change in the behavior also. Conservation of energy is going to be a major thing. Circular economy is going to be a major thing actually. NGNREGA, the National Rural Livelihood Mission, they have to be redesigned, reorchestrated actually. So, if this is the case, I have a proposal. My proposal is, if decentralized community-based approach to manage disasters in general and COVID in particular have to become a reality, then local governments have to play the role of a social mobilization centers. They have to be social mobilization centers. They are not benefit distribution centers. So they have to assume a stronger role to play this role of social mobilization so that, this whole public health, the hygiene message, everything is disseminated well. The second is, in our state, we have done a village level disaster management mitigation plans. And that's it. Village level disaster mitigation plans have to be converted to panchayat level disaster mitigation plans. Panchayat level disaster mitigation plans, if that is done, the whole functionaries of the panchayats, officials involved with the panchayats, they have to be trained. Today we have a national disaster mitigation plan. We have a state disaster mitigation plan, but we do not have a panchayat disaster mitigation plan. So that is the second proposal I am putting before all of you. We have also a national disaster response force, a state disaster response force, but we do not have a community disaster response force. So community disaster response force has to be the order of the day. And they have to remain with the panchayat sector. And the fourth area is, today in our Skilling India program, at the local level, we have trained the rural folks, rural youngsters, in all the skills they would need to go to the city sector. And as a result, the whole range of primary skills which are necessary to make our rural life better, rural life more interesting, more exciting, are missing in the skilling program. Of course, there are primary skills, but that has never got a priority in the skilling delivery system. So primary skill building program will become the major agenda along with a migrant database at the panchayat. So panchayats have to manage who is going in what season, where are they migrating, what is the skill they have acquired, what is the reskilling they need to stay at home, and then if they go, what time they come back. I think the migrants database will become the order of the day actually. I think with these words, let me thank all of you for this wonderful opportunity to start up a new discourse. So we have to imagine a new India. So that's what I said. We have to reimagine a new India in 2022. And a rural renaissance is in the making actually. We have to recognize it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Shri Jagananand. You've given us a new path to move on. First and foremost, you've suggested a reimagined India by 2022, in which the local self-government units function as social mobilization centers rather than as at present benefit distribution centers. You have suggested a village or preferably panchayat level disaster mitigation plan. You have suggested a community disaster response force within the Panchayat Raj institutions, and you've made the very innovative suggestion that where Skilling India is at present designed to provide skills that could be used in cities and urban agglomerations, we need skilling for what needs to be done locally, what you call a primary skills program. Now, that is to go back to Mahatma Gandhi's conception of self-reliant villages. And that is the missing element in all that we have done for development since 1947. I think along with Mahatma Gandhi's assassination in January 1948, there was also the assassination of his concept of villages as centers of self-reliance, where what they could do for themselves, they would do, and only what they could not do for themselves would be, in a sense, outsourced on the basis of comparative advantage elsewhere. And the program that you have set out, if I may say so, is a return to Mahatma Gandhi. Congratulations. That is certainly a very imaginative suggestion, set of suggestions that you've made. And now, if the technical problems have been resolved, can we get back to Dr. Yasin of the UNICEF?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, it's fine.
Hearing
Okay,
you.
great.
Yeah, it's better now. Much better. Much better.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So I hope, I'm not sure how much you heard, but I'll try to condense it because I know we're short of time. And I think in a way it's really good that Jaganandaji spoke before me because I think I will be able to build on some of the concepts that he has presented. And core to this, of course, is what we learned from Kerala in terms of the spirit of volunteerism that we saw during the floods of 2018, which will build on the trust that we have seen of the community in the primary healthcare system and the belief of the state in universal healthcare. These are really crucial elements for reimagining India as we move forward. When we look at, especially, I would like to bring the dimension of children, particularly children, young people, and women. And Kerala has always been showing the light in terms of the state budget, protecting allocations for women and children, despite the challenges that they have faced, playing this vital role in bridging the trust between the health workers and communities by setting up guidelines for the operations of local markets, ensuring the food and food livelihood security, carried out even within a crisis situation where the panchayat level planning and trust in the panchayat was not put to a side, it was not centralized in the way it can happen. And I think it's really important that we continue with this, the spirit of it, and also looking at the core essential services that women and children need, even when we're responding and when we are recovering from a crisis. Now, in many families, we are going to be affected, and a lot of the coping mechanisms, such as dropping out of school, children being diverted into labor, early marriage, increase in violence and abuse, these are things which at the local level, the panchayat have a huge role to play in detecting, addressing, and putting an end to. We have been working very closely with the Disaster Management Authority, with Kudumbashree, with the Kerala Police, and we've seen how the local level initiatives really make a difference in the lives of children. Another thing to flag, of course, is as we look at returning to school in the coming months through the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, how are the COVID response plans in the schools going to be look like? How are they going to recover? What is the role of the school management committee? Again, another local institution that is very important in the lives of children. Another lesson that we learned from the 2018 flood and really the crisis that people faced at that time is when we were able to work very closely with Kudumbashree and put in place the JPPI Accountability to Affected Population Initiative. I won't be able to pronounce the JPPI because it's a very strong Malayalam and my tongue doesn't work its way around it. But really, what was learned in that is already being used to provide psychosocial support and other support to the elderly population or the dependent population in Kerala, which is a feature of the Kerala demography, through the Ashraya scheme. And the community resource people who have been trained as part of the JPPI already have been able to reach out to communities, especially to the elderly, to get from them what are their needs. And examples like in Alaputsa district, Nafisa, who has benefited from this scheme because she was able to give the community volunteer the alert that she was running out of her medicines, and they then connected her with the health worker. Another area I'd really like to add to Sri Jagannathan's reimagined India and reimagined Kerala is that of the crucial role that young people can play in this. Because they are there with that sense of volunteerism, with their sense of wanting to come back and rebuild. So how can we harness through the local government system the energy of the young people, the energy and the commitment of the young people? And in our reimagined world, I would say that maybe there's some questions we need to ask ourselves, because we would need to project forward. To make an estimation of how is this pandemic going to make a difference? What is going to look different about the gains that we have made for reducing mortality, morbidity, improving education? What is going to be looking different as we begin the recovery from this pandemic? What new threats are going to emerge for the population as a result of it? What are the policy changes? And we've heard some really good examples from Sri Jagannathan on what are the policy changes that are needed to accelerate the recovery. And also, what are the new strategies? Our lifestyle is going to have to change. We're sitting in an auditorium with masks on. How are we going to be looking at classrooms? How are we going to be looking at places where people come together, places of worship? And how long are we going to continue it? So really, it's going to take quite a prolonged way of reimagining, but putting in place strategies that people can cope with. And then always ask ourselves, what have we not thought about? What is missing? Because that will stretch us to look beyond it. So I would just want to close here and reiterate all the assertions that have been made of the key role that local self-government has to play in the response to COVID-19. And just to end by quoting our Nobel laureate, Professor Amartya Sen, who said in his emphasis on participatory local governance and public discussion during the hour of crisis, and I quote here, tackling a social calamity is not like fighting a war, which works best when a leader can use top-down power to order everyone to do what the leader wants, with no need for consultation. In contrast, what we need is dealing with a social calamity is a participatory governance and an alert public discussion. So I really once again appreciate the opportunity to join you all, and I wish the 2 days deliberation a lot of success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yasmin. I'm very glad that you have brought into focus, on the one hand, the necessity of linking women and child issues to the Panchayati Raj system at the lowest levels, as well as the question of population, which you touched upon with the panchayats. I can only add that both of these are covered in the illustrative list of functions of the panchayats in the 11th schedule, where women and child development, as well as family welfare, to use our favored euphemism for family planning, is incorporated. And therefore, the constitutional framework to bring your ideas into full operation does exist. It's all been, I think, translated into this conformity state legislation of most state legislatures, perhaps all, I'll have to check. But in any case, I'm sure there's a major role for all these to play. My only reservation is about the school management committees, which thus far are outside the Panchayati Raj system. The panchayats have a token representation, so do the parents. But by and large, it's a bureaucratic structure, and that is why it has not made an effective contribution to learning outcomes or to the actual physical presence of teachers in the classroom in the more backward states than Kerala, where they have a very advanced health and education system. So that, I think, is one of those gaps that needs to be filled. And I would hope that UNICEF can make that contribution, not only in terms of making suggestions about how the school management committees could be integrated into the Panchayat Raj system, but also about how your child feeding and nutrition programs can be more effectively brought under the control of the panchayats instead of being left floating in the air. I know the Union Minister of Women and Child Development will not accept this, because in my time, there was horrendous objection from that ministry to having the panchayats take any role. It was conceived as an attempt by the Ministry of Panchayati Raj to imperialistically increase its role in national governance. But unless and until all these are really brought down to the ground level, I'm afraid the problem that Dr. Jagannathan mentioned a few minutes ago, namely that Gram Sabhas become Jang Sabhas, and we only have discussions of who will be the beneficiaries who are included and the beneficiaries who are excluded, will continue to dominate these Gram Sabha meetings. We have nearly 8 minutes left of this session, and I'm wondering whether I could request Dr. Thomas Isaac to comment
Chairman,
on what he has heard so that we are able to sum up and what has happened in this session. Would that be
Chairman, there
acceptable,
is
or
one
Professor
question
Bose
also. Sir,
have another?
Chairman? No, I perfectly agree with you, but in between, we have 8 minutes. We have one question. There are number of compliments coming through the chats from from our friends who have logged in through YouTube. One, I think, number of compliments to all of you, all the speakers. But I thought there's only one question. How can we strengthen local governments in India? Of course, it's a $1 million question. I think chairman might like all the speakers to reflect upon this question when they, thank you very much.
I think I'm very glad for this question because I really do think that those of us and all of us participating in this program have been in our own ways champions of the Panchayati Raj system. We need to ask ourselves the key question. Why is it that more than a generation after we've had constitutionally guaranteed Panchayati Raj, the Panchayat movement has not attained the objectives that we all thought were so self-evident? It was that empowered Panchayat, empowered with finance functions and with functionaries, would make a huge difference to life in rural India. And yet, that hasn't happened except sporadically and in some places like Kerala, which incidentally was very poor in Panchayati Raj until Thomas Isaac fetched up on the scene. What is it that is responsible for this lack of political will? Because there is clearly a very deep lack of political will, which I saw in the UPA governments when I was a minister. I was a minister for 5 years. And there wasn't really much evidence of the government at that time wanting to be enthusiastic about Panchayati Raj. They were not objecting to it, as has happened, I'm afraid, subsequently. But there is an absence of political will in most states of India. But there is at the same time irreversible progress taking place in virtually every state, with some states like Tripura, like Rajasthan, like Haryana leapfrogging to higher positions. And there's very healthy competition between Kerala and Karnataka as to which is going to be the #1 state in Panchayati Raj. So I hope that at least at a non-government level, we can reconvene the Panchayat Raj group that had been established earlier. Of course, then it had government funding, and now we'll have to do it on a more modest scale. But re-establish that group to see how we can make Panchayati Raj a matter of genuine political will on the part of those who are running the central and state governments and the different parties of India. And now over to Professor Thomas Isaac.
Well, a number of issues have been raised. The most important question was how do you make the local governments effective? We have one advantage, that is, there is a constitutional framework which mandates that local governments must be there. So, as in the past, you can't do away with it. Now, pandemic provides an opportunity because there will be a sharp difference between regions where local governments are very active and regions where they are not. And I think there is a lesson to be learned from here. Now, Mr. Jagadananda raised very valid about 4 points. But I just want to inform that panchayat level mitigation plans, 3/4 the panchayats have already prepared and approved it. And now we were in the process of doing that when the pandemic struck. We hadn't thought about a health emergency, but we are thinking about the floods that might come in June, July, August. So we were in the preparation of these mitigation plans. It's not been completed, but that process is on. And there's going to be a special session in the webinar on our experience in preparation of the panchayat level mitigation plans. And also, community force, very important suggestion. We have now opened up a portal where anybody can register. And now they are allotted to panchayats. Our attempt is to have one volunteer for every 100 citizens. So now all panchayats have registered volunteers who are willing to work in emergencies. Now we are thinking of having a training program for them, as like we have NCC program. So one day every month they would have training in disaster management, rescue operations, and so on. And this force at the panchayat level will be linked to the panchayat. So these are actions being done. I am certain there would be similar good practices elsewhere. So how do we go? How do you make panchayat more effective? Now bringing out these best cases. Okay, there is two ways. One, governments behave with more political will to decentralize, but governments have to be forced to have that will. The experience so far is that the slogan decentralization up to our level, not to our below, which used to be a standard joke in the early 1990s, but I think that continues even now. And therefore, bringing out the best practices in pandemic with the local governments and showing how effective local level intervention have been would strengthen this political will to decentralize. And once you assume that it's going to be 1 year period where the virus is going to be with us, and then I think there is a lot of time within the pandemic itself to learn from experience. That's what I find. There is no way other than to persuade, because the Constitution has given the framework, but within the framework, how much to give down is still the discretion of the those who are on the top. Therefore, there has to be political pressure brought, and we in Kerala thought this would be an opportune moment to do that. So that's all I want to comment now. After hearing everyone, perhaps at the end there is a concluding discussion where I will be participating. I'll reserve my comments for that. I think we can take
Excellent.
one more round, comments from all the participants and stop. Very quick, brief comments.
Thank you. I find that we are now 2 minutes over our time. It's very rarely that inaugural sessions don't run over. So I'm very proud that on this occasion we have been able to say everything we wanted to and still remain within the 1.5 hours allotted to us. I thank all participants and would now hand over the session to the second session, chaired by my long-standing colleague, Shri M.N. Roy of West Bengal. Thank you all for
In the country and also at the state level. And also we had two other active persons who have been engaged in decentralized development in the country. And I think all of you agree that they have really set the trend for the deliberations in the today and day after. The essential ingredients of an empowered Panchayati Raj institutions to enable them to address the situations like pandemic conditions or people pandemic war has been fairly clearly laid down. And we have so far 54 chats from the participants, and there are a few more questions. One question is like, don't you think that education system itself is a problem in the country? This is a comment, but then I am very sure this will be coming up in the tomorrow's deliberation. How can we have banks in every panchayat? Dr. Nandakumar is asking. Maimosa Minus and Abhinav Sharma. What can be the role of district planning committees? So I am very sure these questions will be answered in these deliberations in the afternoon and tomorrow. Please keep watching, and we will get back to you